Welcome to Noob-Splaining. My name is Wolf. If this is your first time here, then this is where I explain the crazy, over-the-top world of Warhammer 40,000 that nerds like me love so much. So, settle in, grab a drink, and prepare for a Noob-Splaining session. Here we go. And before anyone complains I stole that off another YouTuber, she has actually given me permission to use it. So, let's start the year with what is probably the most controversial topic in the whole of Warhammer 40,000. Female Space Marines. Now this really is a prickly topic and divides the fanbase very passionately, either for or against female Marines. So if I don't handle this right, it might well be the end of my YouTube career. Wish me luck. So just to be very clear, the official stance of Games Workshop is female Marines cannot exist, as the female body rejects the gene seed every time, resulting in death for the female aspirant and wasted gene seed, and the gene seed is already so rare they just can't afford to waste it. Now this is the stance that it appears the bulk of the player base also rally behind very passionately. I say the bulk, but a much smaller portion of the player base argue that there should be more female representation in Warhammer 40,000, a game predominantly played by males, a fact that my own analytics attest to, in that all my viewers are, supposedly, aged between 17 and 44, and less than 7% of them are female. Now, when a request like this is made to most companies, they will agree, as representation and inclusion for all is a large factor in today's society. However, Games Workshop doubled down on it and just flat out frankly said no, it's never going to happen. There will never be female Space Marines. They forgot to add again at the end of that statement. Or did they? You see, when the first iteration of 40k came out, which was called Rogue Trader, and I'm talking about the book in the 80s, not the game, it was more of a role-playing skirmish game than a full-on tabletop battle game. The lore was barely in place. The Primarchs were just human generals and not genetically created demigods, and the Horus Heresy wasn't even a thing. Games Workshop did, however, release a load of miniatures that were the adventurers for this game. At the time they imagined 40k Rogue Trader to be a sort of D&D in the future. Now if you look at the top left and bottom right of this image, you will see female warrior Jane and female warrior Gabs, and they are clearly in Mark V power armour. Now this was the late 80s, and social norms then were very different to what they are now. But the one thing that all the stockists kept saying to Games Workshop when they wanted a resupply was, don't send me any more of those female warriors, they're not selling. Now, as I have discussed many times in previous videos, Games Workshop exists for one thing and one thing alone: to make as much fucking money as possible. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. It is, after all, what capitalism is all about, and I'm a big fan of capitalism. Anyway, the female Marines were not selling, so Games Workshop stopped making them. I say Marines because they were wearing power armour, but they were billed as female warriors, and the sisters wear power armour, but they are not Marines, so there is an argument that they were never Marines, they were perhaps the first version of sisters. Either way, Games Workshop made a simple business decision, and it made sense. Car manufacturers will drop a model or make of a car if it doesn't sell well. Clothing companies will stop producing clothes that are no longer in fashion. Games Workshop stopped making models nobody was buying. But the times have changed here, so there are two main things I want to cover. Could Games Workshop introduce female Marines? And finally, should they? So let's quickly rattle through the factions and see what female representation we have, both in lore and in actual physical models. So first up then is the Adeptus Mechanicus. Now there have been several female adepts that have appeared in multiple different stories, both set in current 40k and during the Horus Heresy. To the best of my knowledge, there has never been a female Mechanicus model. Next, the Eldari. In the lore, all citizens of a craft world must serve as a guardian once they reach a certain age, which is their militia cum basic military. Now, some of those that do decide to walk the path of the warrior and take on the teachings of one or more of the aspect warrior shrines over time. So, in lore, any Eldari can be any of the warriors you see on the tabletop. As for the models, the only females one produced are the Howling Banshees, their leader Jain Zar, and the Farseers, all the rest of the models are sculpted as males. The Astra Militarum, or the Imperial Guard. Now, depending on which Guard regiment we're talking about, determines if we get female Guard or not. The Death Corps of Krieg are all clones. Well, more accurately, they're closer to test tube babies than Star Wars style identical clones, so no, they're all male. But at Catachans, we have had multiple artworks featuring male and female Guard, and for many other regiments, there is no reason why they would not be part of the local PDF, and thus pressed into service of the Imperial Guard. In an old codex, there was a planet that only produced female Guard regiments. But as of yet, I am still to see a female sculpt that isn't a 3D print of a Guard. However, the Psyche model does appear to be female. Now, demons are a creature of pure energy that is malevolent, so they have no reason for a social order. However, the Slaanesh models are generally sculpted as female, while the models of the 3 other gods are sculpted as male. The Drukhari are the evil versions of the Eldari, and have the Witches models that are female. In the lore, it is also plausible that any of the models on the table could also be female, like their Eldari cousins. But apart from the Witches, all the models are sculpted as male. The Genestealer cults. Now, the cults are just as likely to recruit females as they are males in the lore, depending on what positions they hold. However, there are no female sculpts in their range to the best of my knowledge. The Leagues of Votan are all cloned, and as they reproduce through cloning, the concept of male and or female is irrelevant in their society, making them asexual. The Necrons are all robots that self-repair, so again they have no need or any way to reproduce. So again, they are an asexual faction. The Orcs reproduce by spreading spores, so again, they are an asexual society. The Sisters of Battle are all female. Many people have called them the female Space Marines, but this is just not true and a huge disservice to the Sisters. The Sisters do not have the genetic enhancements that their cousins the Space Marines do, so they have to train really hard to use the power armour they wear, and still manage to get nearly 100% effectiveness out of it, through discipline and sheer willpower. It is because of this they can handle a bolter, without it breaking every bone in their arm from the monstrous recoil. That is why Guard have lasguns and not bolters. Now, the Tau have female warriors, and one of the named characters is Commander Shadowsun, who is female. The sculpt has a giant suit of armour on though, so apart from the facial looks, it doesn't appear to be very, shall we say, feminine, compared to say the Eldari Banshees or the Sisters of Battle models. And the Tyranids grow each creature they need in gene pools, so again they are an asexual faction, as they don't reproduce, they just grow more. Now, Knights and Titans have been known to have female pilots, or princeps. In fact, the Imperator class Titan featured in the Hell's Reach story and animation was piloted by a female princeps. Again, I am yet to see a sculpt for a pilot that isn't male. This leaves us the Space Marines, Grey Knights, which are basically just psychic Space Marines, and the Custodes, all of which have gene seed that, according to the Games Workshop lore, has a rather bad reaction to the female body. So, in conclusion, the factions that are not asexual have lots of females in the lore, but on the tabletop there is very little in the way of female sculpts, except for the Sisters, who are pretty much exclusively a female faction. So unless you're playing Sisters, if you want to field an exclusively female army, you're looking at non-Games Workshop models, which means you then can't use them in Games Workshop stores or enter Games Workshop tournaments. On to our first question: could there be female Space Marines? Now, this is where we really start getting into the politics of this. I got heavily involved in what became a massive debate on a website's article regarding female Marines. Now, many of the people who are demanding female Marines are clearly very knowledgeable about the 40k universe, but not all of them, with some even stating, if I can't play with female Marines, then I will never play the game, which is a statement more about your politics around this than the actual game. Now, many of the people arguing against female Marines just fell back onto the canon statement from Games Workshop that Gene Seed kills females every time. But then, as I have pointed out before, Games Workshop will change what its canon is if it will sell them more models. And as they found out in the 80s, the female models don't sell. But it's not the 80s anymore. This then brings up the whole point. If they can change the entire canon just to sell more models, then there is no canon. As a prime example, for 30-ish years we were told the Astartes are the perfect creation and cannot be improved upon, as they were crafted by Emperor Chris himself and nobody can match his intellect or genetic manipulation skills. Then all that goes straight out the window when Belisarius Cawl created the Primaris Marines just so Games Workshop can sell more Space Marines to Space Marine players. Instead of a range refresh, they released a completely new range and have slowly been making the old ones obsolete. So if they can change established canon at a whim just to pump up the profit levels, then none of the canon is safe. Thus in turn we can make the assumption that any established canon can be replaced or retconned at any time. Which then raises the question, what is the point in established canon? That's like Vader suddenly being no longer Luke's father. It's such an essential piece of the Star Wars canon, it can't be undone. Just like the Space Marines were the perfect creation of the Emperor and cannot be improved upon. But then they were. And the implications of this means, can we take any of the canon in 40k seriously anymore? Some of the arguments being made in the comments section for female Marines I thought were very well thought out and considered, but I still fell short of the mark required to be a definitive way to get female Marines into the setting. So that got me thinking, how do we get female Marines into a setting that urgently needs more Space Marines? A lot of the arguments were about the difference in physical attributes of a male and a female. Specifically, that males have greater bone density and muscle mass, but that doesn't happen until after puberty. There's a reason why boys and girls in schools play sports together up until about the age of 12. When they start to go through puberty, at that point the boys start becoming much stronger and faster, and the sports are then separated all the way through the rest of adulthood. It is also a fact that if a girl has at least a year of hormone therapy before puberty, specifically testosterone, she will have physical characteristics, namely bone density and muscle mass, to that of a man. In general though, an average man is faster and stronger than the average woman. Of course, you get exceptions to the rule. Someone like Ronda Rousey would kick my fucking teeth down my neck. But if you think she could go up against Conor McGregor? Maybe not. Now, I am in no way detracting from female athletes, fighters, bodybuilders and everything they have achieved, but they just don't share the same level of physical characteristics, i.e. bone density and muscle mass, as a male, and that is a fact straight out of reality. But 40k is not reality, it's a fictional setting, so why can't we have genetically enhanced female Primaris super soldiers, like we have female Spartans in Halo, who are genetically enhanced super soldiers? After all, if Cawl can totally break the current law to make Primaris, he can do it again to make female Marines, right? And herein lies the dilemma. It's suddenly not about the representation anymore, it's about the law. If we keep breaking the law, then there is no more law, and it's the law that grabs a lot of people and drives them into this wonderful hobby we have. So, could there be female Space Marines? Yes, Games Workshop could easily write that into the storyline, but due to the transformation process of a Space Marine, they would have a Space Marine's body, but feminine facial features. So if you're expecting Space Marine with tits, that's not going to happen. The sheer amount of testosterone in their bodies causes certain female organs to not develop, so an upgrade sprue with some female heads on for the Space Marines is all that we would get. The other factions, however, would be very feminine. The way the models are assembled these days, I see no reason why we can't get upgrade sprues for female Guard, Tau, Eldari and Drakari. That way, if people want to change some or all of their models, they can. I think a few clearly feminine models amongst units would add a visual look that is more representative of the actual world of 40k that they have built. and not for reasons of representation from our social views, but what represents this amazing world Games Workshop has crafted for us. So, should there be female Marines? If you're wanting female Marines because you want a Space Marine model with tits, then no, because you've totally missed the point. Likewise, if you want female Marines just for your representation, then again you have missed the point, and you're applying real world culture to a fictional world that isn't real. However, if you want to see more female models across the Guard, Eldari, Drukhari and Tau, because that represents the current world that has been built, then yes, we should get more of those, because they are already in the lore. Female Space Marines are not. Never have been, and probably never will be. For me, I would rather see a larger range of lore-accurate models that include a female option than to shoehorn in a non-lore accurate model of a female Space Marine. Now, I'm not going to lie, when I first approached this subject, I was on the side for female Space Marines, not because I was jumping on the representation bandwagon, but purely because the Imperium urgently needs more Marines, so why not expand the recruitment pool? If you need more recruits, you expand your recruitment pool, you don't lower your standards. Now, although some of the chapters do have very brutal recruitment methods, most of them, it's all down to your mind and your heart, which is very similar to SAS and Navy SEALs recruitment. They don't need you to be a fantastic warrior to start off with. They will turn you into one. What they need to know is you have the heart and mind to do the job. They will make you a fantastic warrior. And that's what a Space Marine transformation is. It will make you into a fantastic warrior. They just need to know you have the heart and mind for it in the first place. Anyway, once I had gotten past the knee-jerk reactions on both sides of the argument that were mostly just plainly bullshit arguments from a place of passion, not of a reasoned line of thinking, I was able to finally discuss the idea of female Marines with some level-headed people who had clearly spent more time than me looking at both sides of the argument, and they were all able to give ups and downs from both sides of the argument, regardless which side of the fence they stood on. Over time I realised that although my vision of a Space Marine with a female head would be accurate to how a female Space Marine would look, it is law breaking for the sake of law breaking, and Games Workshop has already been burned once with female Marines. In fairness, that was way back in the 80s, though still, as the saying goes, once bitten, twice shy. So, should Games Workshop do female Marines? I guess it's still very subjective. If you want to preserve the law, then no. But then if you don't want to preserve the law, you don't really have any respect for this universe. And if you don't really have any respect for the universe, you shouldn't really be in it. Although I did make a point that men and women in the world are not physically equal, it doesn't mean that anyone should be treated with any less respect than anyone else. It does also mean that we should treat any fictional universe with respect for what it is, and not force our political and cultural views on it. It is, after all, just a fucking game. It's meant to be an escape from reality, not an extension of it. So if you won't play 40k because they don't do female Space Marines, then frankly, fuck off and play something that will pander to your political wants. Because that's what you want. Something that will pander to you, not offer you an escape from reality for a few hours at a time. Now, if you think my visual idea of how a female Space Marine would look is accurate, then kitbash some. I did. I'll probably do more as well. It may not be canon and lore accurate, but at the end of the day they are my miniatures. If Games Workshop says female Space Marines are not lore accurate, I can respect that. But they can also respect the fact it's my plastic crack, I'll do what I want with it. And if that means I kitbash some into female Marines, then I will. And there we have it. That brings us to the end of this week's video. If you made it this far, thank you very much. And if you laughed or learned anything, please consider hitting that subscribe and like button. Also, don't forget to share this video with somebody who could do some Noob-Splaining in their life. Please leave a comment. I do try and interact with every comment I get, but most importantly, thank you. And I'll see you next time.